Hey guys, tonight we begin with you standing barefoot on cold stone. Your heart pounding so loud you swear the drummers can hear it from across the plaza. The smell hits first. Smoke from incense thick enough to make your eyes water, mingling with something coppery metallic. The kind of scent you only recognize once you've skinned your knee and tasted blood. Yeah, that. And it's not just in the air, it's in you. You glance up at the massive pyramid looming over you, the temple mayor, and you can't help but notice how steep those stairs are, and how red some of them look. Someone told you it was just paint. You're not convinced. This isn't some random Tuesday in Tenochtitlan, my friend. This is one of those big, calendar-marked, make the gods happy kind of days. The streets are packed with people. Farmers, warriors, market vendors, even children perched on their parents' shoulders. Every single one of them is here for the same reason. To watch what's about to happen to you. No pressure. The priests aren't exactly the comforting type either. They're painted head to toe in black soot, their hair matted, eyes wide and unblinking. And let's not even talk about the knives they carry. Blades made from obsidian, so sharp they could probably slice your thoughts in half. You notice how casually they hold them, like a chef holds a favorite kitchen knife. Here's the thing, they don't tell you in the tourist brochures. If those existed, being chosen for sacrifice isn't always this glamorous honor people make it sound like. Sure, there's some prestige. People might remember your name for a few days. But let's be real, you're still ending up on a slab while a guy in bird feathers pulls your heart out like he's checking if a melon is ripe. And the worst part, you had time to think about it. It started weeks ago. You were either captured in battle, which sounds heroic, until you realize battle mostly involved getting clobbered with a club and dragged away, or, lucky you, you were volunteered. In some ceremony your uncle insisted was a great honor. Thanks, uncle. From that moment, your fate was sealed. You were fed well, given decent clothes, maybe even a few perks. But don't mistake that for kindness. That was just them fattening the turkey before the feast. You were the entertainment, the pre-show hype leading to the main event. And speaking of hype, the Aztecs didn't do anything halfway. The city's buzzing with color and noise. Drums echo in your chest. Conch shells blast from the temple steps. Dancers swirl in costumes covered in shimmering feathers. It's mesmerizing, almost enough to make you forget what's at the top of those stairs. Almost. But here's the secret. Nobody likes to admit, this isn't just about religion. It's about politics. The empire thrives on fear and spectacle. Every sacrifice is a message to enemies and allies alike. This is the price of crossing us, and this is the reward for loyalty to the gods. It's part theater, part warning, and entirely terrifying. And you're center stage. The priest catches your eye. There's no warmth there, just that deep, unsettling calm of someone who's done this more times than you can imagine. You wonder how many hearts his hands have held. You wonder if he remembers any of their faces. Your mind keeps drifting to one thought. Maybe the gods won't notice if I run. But you've seen what happens to the ones who try. It's not pretty, and it usually ends with you still going up those stairs. Only now you're bruised, bleeding, and missing some teeth. The crowd starts to chant. Not your name, exactly, but words that roll like thunder. Tlatsokamati. Tlatsokamati. Thank you. Thank you for dying so the sun will rise. Thank you for keeping the rain coming. Thank you for not messing up this sacred calendar. Day. Funny how gratitude can sound like a death sentence. You're pushed forward, and the first step bites into your bare foot. Then the second. The stairs are steep, the sun hot on your back, and every step feels like walking deeper into a story you didn't volunteer to be in. The drums get louder, faster. The chanting swells. You don't even dare look back. Not at the crowd, not at the city, not at the lake, glinting in the distance. Up ahead, the top of the pyramid waits. For priests, stand around a massive stone slab, their obsidian blades catching the sunlight like they're winking at you. Beyond them, you see the flames of incense fires, curling smoke into the sky, a smoke trail that feels like it's meant to guide your soul somewhere. Hopefully, somewhere nice. And just when you think you've got a grip on your fear, you remember something a fellow prisoner told you the night before. They don't just take your heart. Sometimes, they wear your skin. You thought he was trying to scare you. You prayed he was joking. But now, seeing the way one priest's costume seems unsettlingly human in texture, you're not so sure. One more step. Your shadow falls across the sacrificial stone. The priest gestures for you to lie down. You feel the rough sun-warmed surface against your back. The sky above you is impossibly blue. The drums are deafening now, your chest rising and falling. With each beat, like the world's worst duet, and then the obsidian flashes. But this isn't even the bad part yet. You don't actually feel the blade at first. That's the strange part. Your body is too busy panicking to file the paperwork for pain. Instead, you hear the crowd, a sound that's less cheering, and more like the roar of the ocean. Crashing and retreating, crashing and retreating. Then it happens. The obsidian bites. And suddenly, the world is all light, and heat, and pressure. Your ribs crack, your lungs spasm. And your heart is in someone else's hands before you even finish your next breath. But here's the thing, they never tell you in polite conversation. For the Aztecs, the show isn't over when your heart stops. Oh no. In fact, in many ways, it's just getting started. Your body, now lying limp on the stone, is part of a whole other ritual sequence. One that makes modern horror films look like bedtime stories. First, there's the offering itself. Your heart is lifted high to the sun, literally shown to the god Tonisu, like it's the universe's weirdest snack. Sometimes, it's burned. Sometimes, it's placed in a special container, depending on which god is being honored that day. Think of it like custom order, sacrifice. Meanwhile, your body's well. It's not going to waste. Remember your cellmate's creepy, they wear your skin comment. Yeah, that wasn't campfire storytelling. In certain festivals, particularly those honoring Zyptotec, the flayed lord, priests would literally remove the skin of the sacrifice and wear it as a costume for days. The idea was symbolic, shedding old skin to bring fertility to the earth. Noble in concept, nightmare fuel in execution. And this wasn't some quick, clean job. The skin would still be warm when worn. Imagine walking through the bustling Tenochtitlan marketplace and bumping into someone who smells faintly of incense and something else. You don't know whether to greet them or run screaming. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. In some cases, parts of the body were cooked and eaten by specific members of society. This wasn't random cannibalism, it was ceremonial, structured, and symbolic. Certain warriors, for example, might receive a portion as a mark of honor. A way of literally taking the strength of the sacrificed into themselves. Before you recoil in horror. Remember, in the Aztec worldview, this wasn't cruelty, it was cosmic maintenance. They believed the gods had sacrificed themselves to keep the world alive. And humans were simply paying the rent with interest. But there's another layer. Not everyone chosen for sacrifice died on the pyramid. Some victims participated in elaborate festivals where they were treated like living embodiments of a god for months beforehand, given fine clothes, jewelry, food, even concubines. Sounds amazing, right? Until you realize it all ends with you being walked up those same steps, smiling at the crowd like a celebrity who knows the closing act is going to kill them. This blend of honor and horror was the Aztec specialty, and you've just become one more bead in their endless necklace of ritual bloodshed. Your afterlife experience, according to Aztec belief, depends heavily on how you died. Warriors and sacrificial victims weren't condemned to wander. They went to the house of the sun, accompanying the sun god, for 4 years, before being reincarnated as hummingbirds or butterflies. Romantic, if you ignore the whole violent death part. Down below, the priests are already preparing the next victim. The drums never stop. The chanting rolls on. And somewhere, in the labyrinth of the temple's chambers, your body is being processed for whatever fate, the calendar, and the gods require. It's easy to think the empire did this purely out of superstition. But there's a political chess game here too. Sacrifice victims often came from conquered cities, their deaths a public reminder of the Aztec grip on the region. The message was clear: serve us, and the gods will bless you. Defy us, and you'll be the one blessing the gods. With your heart. And here's a detail they don't mention in classroom history books. Not all victims were war captives or slaves. Sometimes, locals volunteered, usually for the prestige their family would gain, or because they truly believed it was the highest calling. Some even tried to outdo each other, competing for the honor like it was a reality show where the grand prize was an express ticket to the afterlife. Back at the temple, your skull might eventually join the Tezempantli, a massive rack, displaying rows upon rows of human skulls. Imagine walking past that every day, on your way to buy maize. Each empty eye socket a story, each jawbone a warning. But the Tezempantli isn't just for show. It's a ledger. It says, here are the receipts for the blood we've paid to the gods. And now, you're one of those receipts. For the crowd. It's intoxicating, a reminder that their empire is strong, their gods appeased, and the sun will rise tomorrow. For you, while you're busy trying to figure out if hummingbird wings are as light as they look. Yet here's the part nobody in the plaza realizes. The system is starting to strain. Too many wars, too many captives needed, too much pressure to keep the rituals going bigger and bloodier each year. The demand for hearts is becoming unsustainable. And in that imbalance lies the seed of something catastrophic. Something you won't want to miss. You don't actually feel the blade at first. That's the strange part. Your body is too busy panicking to file the paperwork for pain. Instead, you hear the crowd, a sound that's less cheering and more like the roar of the ocean. Crashing and retreating, crashing and retreating. Then it happens, the obsidian bites. And suddenly, the world is all light and heat and pressure. Your ribs crack, your lungs spasm, and your heart is in someone else's hands before you even finish your next breath. But here's the thing, they never tell you in polite conversation. For the Aztecs, the show isn't over when your heart stops. Oh no. In fact, in many ways, it's just getting started. Your body, now lying limp on the stone, is part of a whole other ritual sequence, one that makes modern horror films look like bedtime stories. First, there's the offering itself. Your heart is lifted high to the sun, literally shown to the god, Tonisshu, like it's the universe's weirdest snack. Sometimes, it's burned. Sometimes, it's placed in a special container, depending on which god is being honored that day. Think of it like custom order sacrifice. Meanwhile, your body's well. It's not going to waste. Remember, your cellmate's creepy, they wear your skin comment. Yeah, that wasn't campfire storytelling. In certain festivals, particularly those honoring Zyptotec, the flayed lord priests would literally remove the skin of the sacrifice and wear it as a costume for days. The idea was symbolic, shedding old skin to bring fertility to the earth. Noble in concept, nightmare fuel in execution. And this wasn't some quick, clean job. The skin would still be warm when worn. Imagine walking through the bustling Tenochtitlan marketplace and bumping into someone who smells faintly of incense and something else. You don't know whether to greet them or run screaming. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. In some cases, parts of the body were cooked and eaten by specific members of society. This wasn't random cannibalism. It was ceremonial, structured, and symbolic. Certain warriors, for example, might receive a portion as a mark of honor. A way of literally taking the strength of the sacrificed into themselves, before you recoil in horror. Remember, in the Aztec worldview, this wasn't cruelty, it was cosmic maintenance. They believed the gods had sacrificed themselves to keep the world alive, and humans were simply paying the rent with interest. But there's another layer. Not everyone chosen for sacrifice died on the pyramid. Some victims participated in elaborate festivals where they were treated like living embodiments of a god for months beforehand, given fine clothes, jewelry, food, even concubines. Sounds amazing, right? Until you realize it all ends with you being walked up those same steps, smiling at the crowd like a celebrity who knows the closing act is going to kill them. This blend of honor and horror was the Aztec specialty. And you've just become one more bead in their endless necklace of ritual bloodshed. Your afterlife experience, according to Aztec belief, depends heavily on how you died. Warriors and sacrificial victims weren't condemned to wander. They went to the house of the sun, accompanying the sun god for 4 years, before being reincarnated as hummingbirds or butterflies. Romantic, if you ignore the whole violent death part. Down below, the priests are already preparing the next victim. The drums never stop. The chanting rolls on. And somewhere, in the labyrinth of the temple's chambers, your body is being processed for whatever fate the calendar and the gods require. It's easy to think the Empire did this purely out of superstition. But there's a political chess game here too. Sacrifice victims often came from conquered cities, their deaths a public reminder of the Aztec grip on the region. The message was clear: serve us, and the gods will bless you. Defy us, and you'll be the one blessing the gods. With your heart. And here's a detail they don't mention in classroom history books. Not all victims were war captives or slaves. Sometimes, locals volunteered, usually for the prestige their family would gain, or because they truly believed it was the highest calling. Some even tried to outdo each other, competing for the honor like it was a reality show, where the grand prize was an express ticket to the afterlife. Back at the temple, your skull might eventually join the Tenpantli, a massive rack, displaying rows upon rows of human skulls. Imagine walking past that every day on your way to buy maize. Each empty eye socket a story, each jawbone a warning. But the Tenpantli isn't just for show, it's a ledger. It says, here are the receipts for the blood we've paid to the gods. And now, you're one of those receipts. For the crowd, it's intoxicating. A reminder that their empire is strong, their gods appeased, and the sun will rise tomorrow. For you, well, you're busy trying to figure out if hummingbird wings are as light as they look. Yet here's the part nobody in the plaza realizes. The system is starting to strain. Too many wars, too many captives needed, too much pressure to keep the rituals going bigger and bloodier each year. The demand for hearts is becoming unsustainable. And in that imbalance lies the seed of something catastrophic. Something you won't want to miss. The sky over Tenochtitlan is doing something wrong. You've seen sunsets before. Glorious, golden, the kind that make you forget the smell of dried blood in the temple courtyard. But this is different. The whole horizon burns with an angry red. Not the warm hue of dusk, but a blood-colored glare that makes even the bravest warriors shift uneasily. The omens have been stacking up for years now. First came the fire in the sky, a comet streaking across the heavens, hanging there for nights on end, like the gods had left a burning sword above the city. Then the temple fire, not set by any enemy, but somehow igniting itself, roaring so high the priests swore it was trying to touch the stars. And now, whispers of lakes boiling, strange animals being born with two heads, and the occasional fisherman pulling up a fish with markings that look suspiciously like human faces. To the average citizen, it's terrifying. To the priests, it's an opportunity. Nothing sells the need for more sacrifices, like the idea that the universe is about to fold in on itself. So the bloodletting escalates. Not just captives now. There are reports of entire lines of victims being led up the temple steps, one after the other, each heart ripped out and offered before the previous one has even cooled. The plaza stones run slick. The air chokes with incense and iron, and the Tenpantli grows so full that new racks are being built. From your vantage point, whether as a drifting spirit, a skull on the rack, or a bitter ghost in the crowd, you can feel the desperation. The rituals have lost their measured precision. This isn't confident devotion anymore. It's frantic pleading. Even the nobles start to get nervous. They double-check their family trees to make sure nobody is eligible for a divine calling. Alliances with neighboring states grow shaky, because who wants to send tribute to a capital that might drag you up a pyramid the next time the sky turns the wrong shade? And then there's the strangest omen of all. One night, in the year the priests later call CE a cattle, a strange woman begins appearing on the edges of the city. She's described as tall, cloaked, her face hidden. People say she walks the causeways at night, weeping softly, her voice drifting over the dark lake waters. Oh, my children, your destruction is near. At first, it's dismissed as rumor, some local storyteller trying to spook the drunks. But then, more people see her. Farmers, soldiers, even a few merchants swear they've heard her cry. And when people start disappearing after encountering her, the city's fear turns to outright panic. The high priests respond, the only way they know how. Bigger sacrifices, more incense, louder drums, sharper blades. They even dig into old, half-forgotten rituals, bloodletting ceremonies so ancient that nobody's entirely sure if they're being performed correctly, and yet, nothing changes. The omens keep coming. One dawn, fishermen in the lake report seeing strange towers floating in the distance, shimmering in the early light. Towers that vanished the moment anyone rose toward them. In the palace, Emperor Moctezuma too begins having dreams he won't share with anyone, except to say they are full of shadows. The old warriors mutter that the gods are warning them of an enemy they've never faced before. An enemy that doesn't fight for captives, but for destruction. The problem is, when you've built your entire world on the idea that blood keeps the sun alive, you can't imagine a threat the sun itself won't protect you from. And so, the Aztec heart, proud, defiant, and still beating in ritual after ritual, keeps pumping even as the clouds gather. They don't know that the beating will stop soon. Not because of famine, plague, or rebellion, but because of men, who will step off floating mountains, wearing metal skins, carrying thunder in their hands. Normally Lake Texcoco is a predictable mirror, still in the morning, glittering by midday, and softly rippled by evening breezes. But now, there are shapes on the water that shouldn't be there. Tall shapes, moving shapes. At first the fishermen think it's some kind of floating island, maybe driftwood piled high, or a new kind of war raft from a neighboring city. But as they get closer, their paddles slowing, they realize these things aren't built like anything in the Valley of Mexico. They're taller than the tallest temple, with white cloths billowing in the wind, and strange wooden bodies that cut through the water with impossible speed. Some swear they can see figures moving on them, pale-skinned, dressed in colors that seem to glow, carrying objects that flash in the sun. By the time the news reaches Tenochtitlan, the rumors have mutated. Some say it's Quetzalcoatl himself, the feathered serpent god, returning from across the sea as the old prophecy promised. Others whisper it's a new kind of enemy, sent by rival gods to test the Aztec heart. Moctezuma, too, doesn't take it lightly. He summons his council, sending emissaries to the coast with gifts, gold, feathers, jade, and strict orders. Find out who these people are, but do not provoke them. Days later the emissaries return with stories that sound like drunken hallucinations. The strangers ride animals taller than a man, with long faces and eyes like obsidian mirrors. They wear skins of metal that no obsidian blade can cut, and their weapons, gods help you, their weapons, spit fire and death with a sound like the sky cracking open. But here's the kicker. The strangers seem curious. They don't attack immediately. They eat strange foods, make gestures nobody understands, and accept the gifts with stiff nods. They also make notes, drawings of the land, the people, the temples. You can feel the tension winding tighter with every passing day. The priests debate whether to treat them as gods or men. The warriors itch to test their strength. The common people watch from the edges, trying to decide if this is a festival or a funeral in the making. And then, one evening, the strangers step onto the causeways leading into Tenochtitlan. The city has never seen anything like it. People crowd the streets to watch these metal-clad figures march past, their strange animals clopping on the stone, their banners fluttering in the breeze. The Spaniards, for their part, look around in open amazement. Canals teeming with canoes, gardens floating on the lake, markets bustling with 1,000 colors and smells. It could have been a moment of cautious peace, but of course, ISN, single quotes, TEZUMA, meets them with gifts. Gold discs the size of shields, cloaks woven from quetzal feathers, ornaments of turquoise. The Spaniards smile, bow, and start calculating exactly how much more of this treasure might be hiding in the temples. The Aztecs think they're making allies, or at least keeping the strangers calm. The Spaniards think they're in the richest city they've ever seen, surrounded by people who don't understand the rules of conquest yet, and then quietly, without anyone noticing, the first crack in the empire forms. It's not a battle, not yet. It's the moment one side mistakes fear for reverence, and the other mistakes generosity for weakness. From your ghostly perch, you want to scream it, to warn them that the strangers aren't gods, that the thunder in their hands will shatter more than stone, that the hunger in their eyes is deeper than any ritual's appetite. But you can't, and so the causeways stay open. The Spaniards walk deeper into the heart of Tenochtitlan, and the blood that will soon run in the streets isn't for the gods anymore. If history had a most awkward friendship award, Moctezuma and Hernancourts would win it in a landslide. From the moment Courts sets foot in Tenochtitlan, the air between him and Moctezuma is thick with courtesy and suspicion. They speak through translators, each carefully choosing words the other can't fully read. They exchange gifts, precious stones for iron weapons, feather cloaks for glass beads, but every smile hides a calculation. You can almost see the thought bubbles over their heads. Moctezuma, if this is Quetzalcoatl, returned, I must honor him, but if it's not, I need to keep him close enough to control. Courts, if this man is a god, great, but if he's just a man, he's a man sitting on more gold than the King of Spain has ever dreamed of. The Spanish are given quarters in one of the palace complexes, an honor usually reserved for high guests. But this hospitality also keeps them under watch. Moctezuma sends servants with food, drink, and gifts, and spies. Every joke, every whispered word, every glance toward the temples is noted. Meanwhile, Courts sends small groups of soldiers out into the city under the guise of exploring. They take mental notes on the causeways, the bridges, the choke points. They're building a map, not just of Tenochtitlan's beauty, but of its weaknesses. The common people are split. Some are dazzled by the Spaniards' horses, armor, and strange weapons. Others mutter that they smell wrong, speak like their tongues are broken, and carry themselves like predators who haven't eaten yet. The priests, especially, are uneasy. They've caught the Spaniards looking at the temples too long, their eyes lingering on the gold fittings, the jewel-encrusted idols. Then comes the first real fracture. Courts asks. No. Insists on seeing the great temple up close. Moctezuma agrees, perhaps thinking to impress them with the grandeur of the Templo Mayor. But as the Spaniards climb those blood-streaked steps and reach the altar, the smell of dried sacrifice hits them. Courts stiffens. His men exchange looks. Later, in private, he tells Moctezuma that the idols must be removed. The temples cleansed in the name of the Christian God. You can imagine how well that goes over. Moctezuma refuses politely at first, but Courts' docility drop it. The two men circle each other like jaguars, in the same cage, each pretending to be calm while quietly plotting. Then, an event outside the city changes everything. A group of Spanish soldiers, stationed on the coast to guard their ships, clash with another Spanish expedition sent by a rival governor. Blood is spilled, cannons roar, and the survivors stagger back to Courts with the news. Suddenly, the godlike Spaniards aren't invincible. They fight and kill each other just like men. For Moctezuma, this is a moment to reconsider. For Courts, it's a flashing red warning. If word of weakness spreads in Tenochtitlan, he and his men are finished. So he makes a move that will go down in history as one of the most reckless gambits ever pulled in the New World. One morning, Courts invites Moctezuma to visit the Spanish quarters. Moctezuma comes, escorted but unarmed, expecting more polite conversation. Instead, he finds himself surrounded by armed Spaniards. Courts tells him with a smile that for his own safety, the emperor will now be a guest in their quarters. In other words, Moctezuma just became a hostage in his own city. The news spreads through Tenochtitlan like fire in dry grass. The people are stunned. Some can't believe their Tlatoani, their great speaker, would allow himself to be held. Others rage, whispering about blood vengeance. The priests mutter that this is the god's punishment for letting strangers into the heart of the empire. And you, if you were still alive, would know exactly how dangerous this moment is. Because when a people built on ritual and honor feel humiliated, they don't forgive. They bide their time, sharpen their blades, and wait for the first drop of blood to signal the flood. And that drop is coming. Asterisk. At first, the streets of Tenochtitlan are eerily quiet. Cosima, now effectively a prisoner in the Spanish quarters, still appears on the palace balcony to address his people, assuring them he's safe and that these guests must be treated with respect. His voice carries across the plaza, but the words land flat. The people watch him with unreadable expressions. It's not fear you see in their faces. It's something colder, a slow, simmering calculation. The Spaniards think they've secured the city by holding its emperor. In truth, they've just planted themselves in the middle of a powder keg. The tipping point comes in the spring of 1520. During the festival of Toxcatl, a sacred celebration in honor of Tezcatlipoca, the god of fate and sorcery. It's one of the most important events of the year. Music, dancing, bright feathers spinning in the sunlight. The pounding of drums echoing between the towering temples. The Aztec nobles dress in their finest regalia, their bodies painted with intricate patterns. Warriors carry obsidian blades, not for battle but for ceremony. The air is thick with incense and the sweet temps of fresh flowers. And somewhere, behind all the color and song, Cortes' men see danger. Cortes himself isn't even in the city. He's marched east with part of his force to deal with that rival Spanish expedition on the coast. In his absence, he's left Pedro de Alvarado, a man whose temper runs hotter than the midday sun. In charge, Alvarado has been watching the preparations for Toxcatl with growing suspicion. To him, the warriors' ceremonial weapons don't look so ceremonial. He convinces himself that the festival is a cover for an uprising. Whether he's right or not hardly matters. When the music is at its height and the dancers are in full motion, Alvarado gives the order. The Spanish soldiers seal off the entrances to the sacred precinct. Then, with steel blades flashing in the sun, they wade into the crowd. It's not battle, it's slaughter. Men fall first, their bodies collapsing into the dust, blood soaking the carved stone. Women scream. The music stops mid-beat, replaced by the ragged sound of people running, only to find the exits barred. Obsidian clubs shatter against Spanish armor, but the retaliation is merciless. The plaza becomes a killing ground. The bright feathers of the dancers are trampled into the mud, their colors running with red. Survivors will later speak of bodies piled so high they blocked the temple steps. By the time the killing stops, the festival has become a massacre. News rips through Tenochtitlan faster than any runner could carry it. Those who weren't there hear the details from the trembling mouths of survivors. The betrayal cuts deep. This wasn't war on the battlefield. This was blood spilled in the heart of their most sacred ceremony. And now, the simmering resentment toward the Spaniards bursts into open fury. Shouts rise from every quarter of the city. Marketplace is empty. Warriors rush to arm themselves. The causeways and canals are suddenly bristling with men ready to block any escape. The Spanish quarters, once just a guarded compound, now feel like a fortress under siege. Stones begin to rain down from the rooftops. Arrows hiss through the air. Every alley and causeway is thick with movement. When Cortes returns from the coast, he walks into a city transformed. Gone are the cautious smiles and polite exchanges. Now every face in Tenochtitlan looks at him with the same expression. You are dead men walking. The real siege is about to begin. It begins with a silence so heavy it feels unnatural. The streets of Tenochtitlan, once alive with the hum of trade and the scent of fresh maize bread, are now empty. Not because the people have fled, but because they're watching. From doorways, from rooftops, from the shadowed mouths of alleyways, the Spaniards are trapped inside the royal compound. The same walls that once served as their palace of comfort, now serving as the bars of a cage. Every gate is guarded, every approach bristling with Aztec warriors. The bridges along the causeways are dismantled, piece by piece, leaving only gaps over the canals that the Spanish cannot easily cross. Cortes tries to negotiate, but the massacre at Toxcatl has burned away any trust that once existed. Moctezuma himself is ordered to speak to his people from the balcony again. But this time, the crowd greets him with gears and stones. One rock strikes his head, sending the emperor crumpling back into the shadows. He will never speak to his people again. The siege tightens with a kind of patient cruelty. The Aztecs cut off the aqueducts that carry fresh water into the city. Food stores dwindle quickly. The Spanish soldiers, and their Tlaxcalan allies, begin to ration stale maize cakes, then dog meat, then anything they can chew. Hunger gnaws, not only at their bellies, but at their strength. Their judgment, every attempt to forage or fetch water, is met with a rain of obsidian-tipped arrows from waiting warriors. Canoes patrol the canals like wolves, guarding a kill dot at night. The city becomes a world of sound. the rhythmic beat of war drums, the shrill calls of conch shell horns, and the taunting shouts of warriors, promising that the dawn will bring death. Inside the compound, the air grows thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and untreated wounds. The wounded moan through the night. Rats scurry freely, bold enough to gnaw at unattended scraps. And sometimes, corpses Quartz knows that if they stay, they will die here. His plan is desperate. Break out at night, rush the causeway, and fight their way to the mainland. June 30th, 1520, the night of the escape. A heavy summer rain begins to fall, turning the stone streets slick and filling the canals with dark rippling water. Under the cover of darkness, the Spaniards strap on their armor and gather their loot chests of gold, jewels, sacred artifacts torn from Tenochtitlan's temples. The weight of it will slow them, but greed is stronger than fear. They move in silence at first, leading their horses across the narrow causeway that stretches toward Tacaba. The night is broken only by the sound of rain on metal. Then from the darkness comes the shout. Canoes slide from the shadows on either side of the causeway. Drums, thunder, arrows, whistle. Warriors pour out from hidden positions, cutting off the escape routes. Panic takes hold. Horses rear, men stumble under the weight of gold. Some fall into the canals, their armor dragging them down into black water. The causeway becomes a killing ground, every step forward, bought with blood. They will call this night La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows. And for many, it will be the night their bones sink to rest beneath the lake. They run. There is no formation now. No grand military order, only the raw, primal scramble of men who know that every heartbeat could be their last. The causeway ahead is choked with the dead and dying. The cries of the wounded mingle with the guttural war chants of the Aztec warriors pressing in from all sides. The rain turns the stone path into a slick trap, and more Spaniards slip into the water. The lucky ones surface, gasping, clawing at the sides, only to be dragged under by warriors in canoes. Others vanish without a sound, swallowed by the dark lake. Weighed down by the very gold they refuse to abandon, Quartz pushes forward. Cutting down any who block his path, he shouts orders no one can hear over the chaos. Behind him, the screams of the Tlaxcalan allies rise. They are cut down with even greater fury. The Aztecs showing no mercy to those who fought beside the invaders. Horses maddened by fear crash into the water. The sound of their flailing hooves echoes across the lake, before it is silenced by the wet, final splash of drowning. By the time the survivors reach the far end of the causeway, the eastern sky is beginning to pale. The rain slows, and the drums fade into the distance. But there is no relief. What remains of the Spanish force is a shattered, staggering column. Armor is dented, weapons are dulled, and eyes are hollow. Quartz stands among them, his face streaked with mud and blood, looking back toward the city they failed to escape cleanly from. The island still smolders faintly under the gray dawn. They count the losses. Nearly half their number is gone. So much gold is lost beneath the waters that the survivors barely have the strength to carry what little remains. And yet, the Aztec warriors are not content with simply driving them out. From the safety of the mainland, the Spanish can see canoes darting across the lake, like predators scenting blood. The pursuit will not stop. They march westward, toward Tlaxcala, hoping for refuge. But the road is a gauntlet. Along the way, they pass villages that refuse them food or water. Scouts vanish into the hills and do not return. Every few miles, war parties descend upon them, testing their strength, thinning their numbers, at Otumba. The Aztecs gather for a final killing blow. Tens of thousands of warriors block the road, their banners whipping in the wind. The Spanish form ranks, but they are exhausted, half-starved, and outnumbered 20-1. The battle is chaos, dust and shouting, obsidian blades flashing, shields splintering. For hours it seems the Spaniards will finally be erased from history here, in the dry basin, far from the lake. Then Quartz, seizing the smallest of openings, rides hard through the melee and strikes directly at the enemy commander, felling him with a single thrust of his lance. The shock ripples through the Aztec lines. Without their leader's signal, their advance falters. Confusion spreads, then, retreat, against all odds. The Spaniards break through. It is not victory, it is survival. But for Quartz, that is enough. For he knows that as long as he still breathes, the war is not over. The road to Tlaxcala is long and bitter, and every step grinds the memory of the night of sorrows deeper into the bones of the survivors. They arrive like wraiths, gaunt, filthy, and smelling of blood and lake water. Tlaxcalan elders watch them approach with narrowed eyes, for even allies have limits to their patience when war brings only ruin. But Quartz is not the kind of man to bow his head in shame. He stands before the council and speaks not of defeat, but of destiny. He paints the Aztecs as a mutual enemy whose arrogance demands annihilation. He reminds them of their dead, the sacrifices made in the name of breaking free from Tenochtitlan's tribute demands. His voice is steady, his gaze unblinking, and somewhere in that hall, a flicker of resolve returns to the room. The Tlaxcalans agree to give him shelter. The months that follow are a grim kind of resurrection. Spanish blacksmiths set to work repairing armor dented in the causeway retreat. Tlaxcalan craftsmen fashion new weapons, long-hardened spears meant for striking from canoes, shields woven tight with reinforced hides. Quartz does not let his men rest for long. Every morning they drill, learning to fight not only on land but on water. For he has seen how the lake is the Aztecs' lifeblood. News filters in from the valley. The Aztecs, triumphant after their expulsion of the foreigners, have crowned a new emperor, Cuauhtémoc, young but fierce. He wastes no time in sealing the city, repairing its causeways, and reinforcing the canals with traps. Runners report the ritual executions of captured Spaniards and Tlaxcalans, their hearts offered to the gods in ceremonies that stretch long into the night. But the empire is not without its wounds. Smallpox, carried unknowingly by the Spanish months earlier, now stalks Tenochtitlan. It spares neither noble nor commoner. Entire households vanish in a week. The stench of the dead drifts over the lake. Cuauhtémoc orders bodies burned, but still, the sickness spreads. Quartz nose disease will weaken the Aztec defenses, but it is not enough. By early 1521, he has gathered thousands, Spanish soldiers reinforced by more than 100,000, native allies from Tlaxcala, and other enemy tribes of the Mexica. He has also built something the Aztecs never expected, 13 brigantines. Ships capable of sailing the lake and cutting off Tenochtitlan from supplies the day they are launched. Drums beat in Tlaxcala, and fires burn on the hills. The air tastes of smoke and iron. Quartz watches the sails catch the wind and thinks not of the lives lost, but of the prize ahead. When the army marches once more toward the Valley of Mexico, it moves like a tide, slow, relentless, and certain. Villages along the way are given a choice: join or be destroyed. Most bend the knee. Those who do not see their homes burned before the sun sets by the time the Spaniards reach the edge of the lake. The Aztec capital rises before them like a vision from another world. Gleaming temples, endless rows of whitewashed houses, and the vast, still waters that seem to guard it like a moat around a jewel. Quartz gaze hardens. He has come to finish what he started. And this time, there will be no retreat. The siege begins not with a single great clash, but with the slow tightening of a noose at dawn. The 13 brigantines fan out across the shimmering waters of Lake Texcoco, their sails snapping in the wind. The Aztec canoes dart toward them, at first brimming with warriors painted in crimson and obsidian, but the Spaniards have studied their tactics. Crossbows and harquebuses speak from the decks, splintering the thin wooden hulls. Steel-tipped pikes reach down into the water, skewering those who try to climb aboard. Soon the lake belongs to Quartz. With the waterways cut, he moves to sever the causeways. Columns of Spaniards and Tlaxcalans march onto the long, narrow stretches of stone that connect the city to the mainland. It is a perilous advance. The Aztecs fight like shadows, vanishing into side canals, striking from rooftops, raining down obsidian darts. Every foot of ground is paid for in blood. Inside, Tenochtitlan refuses to surrender. His voice carries over the city, squares urging the people to remember the gods who had always favored them, to fight not only for their lives, but for the honor of their ancestors. Women grind maize into tortillas and bring them to the warriors at the barricades. Children carry jars of water through the maze of streets. The city breathes resistance, but the siege is merciless. Day by day, Quartz orders his forces to dismantle the causeways, leaving only narrow sections his men can control. The brigantines patrol relentlessly, intercepting any attempt to ferry supplies across the lake. The market at Tlatelolco, once the beating heart of the empire's commerce, falls silent. Grain stores empty. People begin to boil leather straps for soup chewing until their jaws ache. Then the sickness returns. Smallpox had burned through months before, but now starvation breeds other plagues: dysentery, fever, wasting coughs. The canals that once carried clean water now carry rot. Still, the Aztecs fight on. Night raids slash through the Spanish lines. In one daring strike, warriors capture a handful of Spaniards alive, dragging them into the temple precinct. By morning, their severed heads are displayed on wooden racks, their hearts gone to the gods. Quartz forces himself to look upon them without flinching. He will repay the message tenfold. Week after week, the siege grinds on. Tlaxcalan allies take the brunt of the street fighting, darting into narrow alleys, while the Spaniards provide covering fire. Slowly the Spaniards push deeper, burning what they cannot hold, leaving smoldering ruins in their wake. The smell of the city changes once incense and flowers. Now smoke, rot, and death. The great temples still rise above it all, but even they seem to sag beneath the weight of the dying dot. By midsummer, the once proud island city is a hollowed shell. Corpses float in the canals. Whole neighborhoods lie silent, except for the flap of vultures' wings. The final act of Tenochtitlan's defiance begins with a silence so heavy it presses on the lungs. Cuauhtémoc stands at the steps of the Templo Mayor, his eagle-feathered headdress dulled with dust, his obsidian-bladed spear clutched tight. Around him, the remaining warriors gather, gaunt, bleeding, eyes sunken, yet still bright with a fire that hunger cannot quench. The Spaniards and Tlaxcalans have breached deeper into the city than ever before. The streets, once crowded with vendors and laughter, are narrow corridors of rubble and corpses. Every wall is pocked with the marks of musket balls. Every canal is a trap of bloated bodies. At dawn, Quartz unleashes the full weight of his forces. Brigantines close in on the edges of the city, their cannon pounding the outer districts. From the causeways, armored soldiers advance in staggered lines, shields raised, harquebuses firing into the smoky haze. Tlaxcalan allies swarm behind them, their war cries mixing with the dull boom of artillery. The Aztecs respond with one last surge of fury. From rooftops, they hurl stones and javelins. Canoes dart between the larger Spanish ships, attempting to ram them or set them ablaze. At street level, warriors wielding Macuahuitl charge headlong into enemy ranks. Willing to die if it means taking a Spaniard with them, the fighting spills into the temple precinct. Blood runs down the worn stone steps, mixing with the rain that begins to fall, a sudden summer storm that turns the dust to red mud. Thunder cracks overhead, drowning out the screams for brief moments. Inside the Templo Mayor, priests make hurried offerings, chanting to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, imploring them to turn the tide. Smoke from burning copal thickens the air until the warriors' eyes water, but they do not falter. Then the Spaniards break through. A squad of conquistadors crashes into the temple courtyard, their steel cutting through the obsidian blades. Tlaxcalans flood in behind them, overwhelming the defenders with sheer numbers. Cuauhtémoc fights like a cornered jaguar, his spear darting and slashing, his voice carrying above the chaos. Not one step back, not while the gods watch. But the gods, if they are watching, do not intervene. One by one, his warriors fall. Arrows and stones give way to silence as the last of the defenders are cut down. Cuauhtémoc does not surrender here. Instead, under cover of night, he slips away with a small group of survivors, hoping to reach the lake and escape. But even that path is closed. The brigantines patrol endlessly, their lanterns glowing like predatory eyes in the dark. When the dawn comes, Tenochtitlan is no longer the city of shimmering canals and bright marketplaces. It is a ruin, a place where the air itself tastes of ashes. The empire is broken, though its spirit clings stubbornly to the few who still live. The lake is black glass under the morning sun. broken only by the slow, deliberate ripples of the Spanish brigantine's Cuauhtémoc, crouches low in the canoe, every muscle tense. The men with him, a handful of warriors and his wife, Tequichpo, paddle in silence, their movements quick but controlled. The smell of smoke still lingers from the night before, drifting across the water from the burning heart of Tinochtitlán. They know they cannot return. The city is gone, but perhaps, if they can slip through the Spanish net, they can reach the far shore, regroup, and strike again someday. It is the last ember of hope, and it flickers dangerously in the wind. From the east, a shout cuts across the water. A brigantine has spotted them. The canoe surges forward as the warriors dig their paddles into the water with desperate strength. Behind them, the Spanish ship's oars churn up foam, the hull slicing through the lake like a predator closing in. Muskets crack, and the water hisses where bullets strike. A second brigantine appears from the north, blocking their path. Glances around, the trap is closing. The air fills with the thrum of crossbow strings and the splash of incoming arrows. The warriors fight back. Arrows arc toward the Spanish ships, but most clatter harmlessly against wooden hulls or bounce off shields. One man leaps into the water, attempting to swim beneath a brigantine to overturn it. But his spear drops from above, piercing him through. His body floats for a moment, then sinks. Within minutes, the canoe is surrounded. Spanish soldiers lean over the rails, barking orders. One brigantine captain, Garcia Olguin, calls out to Cuauhtémoc in broken Nahuatl, promising safety if he surrenders. The words are a thin veil over the truth. Cuauhtémoc rises slowly, his eyes locked on the Spaniards. He is weary beyond measure, but his voice is steady. "Take me to your captain," he says. They bind his hands and haul him aboard the wooden planks. Slick beneath his bare feet, Tequichpo follows, her face expressionless, though her eyes flash with grief and fury. The warriors are disarmed, their obsidian blades tossed into the water. When they bring him before Hernan courts, Cuauhtémoc does not bow. His gaze is level, his chin lifted, and then he speaks the words that will echo through history. "I have done what I could to defend my people. Now draw that dagger you carry at your belt and kill me at once." For a moment, the only sound is the creak of the brigantine's timbers and the slap of water against its hull. Court stares at him, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he shakes his head no. "You will live," Quartz replies. "It is not mercy. It is something far colder. For life under the Spanish will not be life, as Cuauhtémoc has known it, bound and surrounded by his enemies." The last emperor of the Aztecs is taken. Back toward the smoking ruin of Tenochtitlan. Above them, vultures circle, patient as the conquerors. The air in Tenochtitlan is thick with rot. The once bright avenues are now rivers of filth, clogged with the bloated corpses of warriors, women, and children alike. The smell is a physical force, clinging to the lungs, coating the tongue with the taste of death. Cuauhtémoc is marched through what was once his city. Hands bound, flanked by Spanish soldiers, whose armor glints in the wan sunlight. Every step is an assault on memory here. The marketplace, where merchants once called out their wares in a dozen languages. There, the steps of the great Templo Mayor, now blackened by fire and streaked with blood. The survivors, skeletal and hollow-eyed, peer from behind shattered doorways. Some whisper prayers to the old gods, others turn away, unable to meet his gaze. To them, he is both a symbol of their defiance and a reminder of their defeat. Quartz walks ahead, speaking in low tones with his captains. His voice is measured, but there's a restless edge to it. This victory, bought with years of war and thousands of lives, is not yet secure. Even in ruin, the spirit of the Mexica people is dangerous. And Cuauhtémoc, alive, is a blade that could still cut. They bring him to the palace once the home of Moctezuma, now stripped of gold and draped in Spanish banners. Here, Quartz installs himself as ruler of a city that no longer breathes. Cuauhtémoc is given a small chamber, guarded day and night. The walls are bare, the air damp. At night, rats skitter across the floor, gnawing at scraps. For days, he is interrogated. The Spaniards believe that somewhere in this dead city lies a hidden treasure. The gold and jewels of the Mexica, concealed before the final assault, they ask, again and again. Where it is? Cuauhtémoc says nothing. The questions turn to threats. Threats turn to torture. One morning, they drag him from his chamber and bring him into a courtyard. The sun is merciless, turning the white stone into a mirror of heat. There, in front of Quartz, his feet are placed over glowing coals. The smell of burning flesh rises almost instantly, sharp and nauseating. Through clenched teeth, Cuauhtémoc endures. Beside him is Tetelpanquetzal, Lord of Tlacopan, who writhes in agony, crying out, "Am I on a bed of roses?" Cuauhtémoc says to his fellow noble, his voice ragged but unbroken. The words are not mockery, they are a reminder to endure. Quartz watches, his expression flat. Perhaps he knows that this cruelty will yield nothing. Perhaps he simply does not care. The Spaniards will not stop until they believe every last ounce of gold is in their possession. When the coals are finally removed, Cuauhtémoc's feet are blackened and raw, the skin split and weeping. He has returned to his chamber, where Tuc tends to his wounds with what little she can find. Cool cloths soaked in water. Whispered prayers that drift into the silence. Weeks pass. The city is dismantled stone by stone, the canals filled in, the temples torn down to make way for churches. The old gods are silenced, their statues toppled and buried. The sound of hammers and saws fills the air, mingling with the cries of the enslaved who labor under Spanish whips. Through it all, Cuauhtémoc waits. Not for rescue, that is a dream long dead, but for the moment when the Spaniard's grip falters, when even the smallest act of defiance might mean something, yet fate does not grant him that moment. In early 1525, Quartz decides to march south, seeking new conquests in the jungles of Honduras. He takes Cuauhtémoc with him, along with other captured nobles. The journey is grueling. Heat, disease, and hunger stalk the expedition. Along the way, whispers reach Quartz's ears. Rumors of rebellion. Murmurs that Cuauhtémoc is plotting to rise against him. Whether the stories are true or fabricated, by men eager to see the emperor dead, they seal his fate. One humid morning, in the shadow of the ceiba trees, Quartz calls Cuauhtémoc before him. The emperor is told of the accusations. There is no trial, no chance to speak in his defense. Cuauhtémoc looks into the eyes of the man who destroyed his city, the man who now claims to rule in his place. He says nothing. Perhaps there is nothing left to say. The order is given. 2 soldiers lead Cuauhtémoc to a clearing. The air is heavy with the scent of earth and wet leaves. Birds scream overhead. Tequitchbo is kept back, her cries muffled by the hands of those who restrain her. The emperor stands tall. There is no tremor in his voice as he speaks his final words, a prayer to the sun, a call to his ancestors, and a vow that his spirit will never serve. The rope is placed around his neck. Moments later, the last Tlatoani of the Mexica hangs, lifeless, swaying gently in the jungle air. The Spaniards move on, leaving his body behind, as if history itself could be abandoned in the dust. But the story of Cuauhtémoc will not die here. It will live in whispered songs, in hidden carvings, in the bloodlines of those who survive. For in the hearts of his people, he remains not the conquered, but the one who refused to kneel. By now you've gotten used to the fact that in this whole Aztec sacrificial gig, personal space is a foreign concept. You can't even sneeze without a priest side-eyeing you like, "That sneeze. Yeah, that's a bad omen." And bad omens, those just make the crowd more hyped for what's about to happen. Today, though, feels different. Not different like the time you accidentally stepped on the corn, God's shrine, and lived. No, this is special event, different. The kind where the air feels heavy, like it's thick with smoke, sweat, and destiny plus a little too much. Chili from last night's feast, drifting over the plaza. You're shuffled toward the Templo Mayor again. But the crowd is massive. There are so many people, you start wondering if there's a festival you missed until you realize, oh wait, I'm the festival. Great as the priests lead you up the steep stone steps, you see them. The obsidian knives. They're not polished like jewelry, they're polished. Like someone really cares about the cut quality. Razor sharp, so sharp they don't glint, they just drink in the light. The high priest catches you staring and smiles. It's not a friendly smile, it's that we're going to be great friends in the next life kind of smile. You can hear the drums now, pounding like your own heartbeat. No correction, pounding with your heartbeat. The rhythm is designed to sync with you, to make you feel like you're already part of some great cosmic machine. And honestly, it works. You're a gear in this bloody, gold-plated clockwork, and there's no getting out. The high priest begins chanting, and the crowd joins in. It's almost hypnotic, almost comforting, until they grab your wrists and ankles. For strong priests, Sir personal security detail, hold you down on the altar. Your back presses into the cold, sun-warmed stone. You can smell it now, faint iron tang of dried blood that never truly washes away. The high priest raises the obsidian blade above you. He's chanting about Huitzilopochtli, the sun god who needs your heart so he can keep dragging the sun across the sky tomorrow. That's the thing about being an Aztec sacrifice. You're not just dying, you're doing cosmic manual labor. And then a horn sounds from somewhere deep in the city. Everyone freezes. Even the high priest pauses mid-chant. You can see uncertainty flicker across his face. That's not part of the usual ceremony. Another horn, louder, closer. The crowd murmurs. Some step back. Others press forward like they're afraid to miss what happens next. The high priest lowers the knife slightly, glancing toward the causeway that leads into the city from where you're lying. You can't see much, just slivers of sky between the priest's headdress feathers, but you can hear it. A low, steady sound like distant thunder. Footsteps marching. Something's coming. Something big enough to interrupt the most sacred ritual in the Aztec Empire. Your heart is still in your chest, but suddenly it's pounding for a whole new reason, and that's when you realize maybe, just maybe, this is not going to end the way you thought it would. The priests holding you down don't let go, but you can feel their grip loosen just enough to tell they're distracted. Their eyes keep darting toward the causeway. That's where the sound is coming from. Boots on stone, echoing over the water. Boots. Not sandals. Not bare feet. The Aztecs know the sound of their own warriors, light, quick, agile. This is slow, heavy, deliberate. The kind of march you do when you want the world to know you're coming and you don't care if it's ready. The high priest stands taller, blade still in hand, his gaze locked on the horizon. The feathered headdress sways slightly in the breeze, but his face is set like stone. The drumbeat stops. You don't realize how loud the drums were until the silence hits you. Thousands of people standing shoulder to shoulder in the great plaza, not making a sound. The city's pulse has stopped. All you hear is the approaching march. Then you see them. First, the glitter of metal. Not gold is warm, rich, familiar here. This is something colder, harder, armor. The sunlight bounces off it like it's trying to blind anyone who stares too long. Behind that metal are faces pale, sharp-eyed, framed by strange beards that no Aztec man wears. And with them, beasts. You've never seen anything like them. Taller than a man, broad-shouldered, with eyes that flash white as they move. The strangers sit on top of them, as if riding part of the gods themselves. The animals' hooves strike the causeway stones in a rhythm that makes your teeth vibrate. The crowd's whisper rises. Some call them messengers of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god. Others hiss the word Tlacatecalotl Menau. Demon. The high priest does not move. You notice his grip on the obsidian blade tighten. He's not a man who scares easily, but his jaw is clenched now. Whatever these newcomers are, they're powerful. Enough to interrupt the heartfring to Huitzilopochtli. That means they're dangerous. The strangers step into the plaza. They don't rush. They move with the calm of people who believe the ground belongs to them. Their leader, taller than the rest, with a plume of red feathers on his helmet, raises a hand. The armored men stop. The beasts stop too, stamping their hooves once, sending little chips of stone skittering. A voice speaks. You don't understand the words. The sound is harsh, like stones grinding together, but there's a rhythm to it. The leader points not at the high priest, not at the crowd, but at you. And just like that, you feel every pair of eyes in the plaza shift back to you. The high priest speaks now, his voice booming in Nahuatl, the sacred language of the empire. You know enough to catch pieces. Huitzilopochtli, omen, gift, no interference. The stranger replies, gesturing toward you again. The tension between them feels like it could split the air. The priest wants to finish the ritual. The stranger wants you alive, dead. Something else entirely. One of the armored men steps forward. The light hits his chest plate, and for a second, it's like the sun itself has descended. He pulls something from his belt, a long tube of metal and wood, and points it toward the altar. The high priest's voice sharpens into a command. The 4 priests holding you tighten their grips again, and then bang. The sound is like nothing you've ever heard. Not thunder, not drums, not anything human. Smoke bursts from the tube. A moment later, the stone beside your head chips away, sending tiny shards into your hair. Screams ripple through the crowd. Some run, others drop to their knees, thinking the gods have arrived in wrath. The high priest doesn't flinch, but you see his calculation change. These men, these beasts, this noise. It's something the Aztec gods never warned him about. He lowers the knife. It's not mercy, it's strategy. He barks an order, and the priests pull you up. You're dragged from the altar, your vision bouncing with every step, the obsidian knives no longer at your ribs, but still dangerously close. The stranger's leader raises his hand again, palm outward, as if signaling them to stop. The high priest ignores it, shoving you toward a narrow stairway that drops into the side of the Templo Mayor. The last thing you see before you disappear into the temple's shadow is the stranger's face, eyes locked on you. Mouth set in a line that could mean anything. Down in the darkness, the air changes. Cool, damp, smelling of stone and incense. The sounds of the plaza fade to muffled chaos. You're not dead, not yet. But now, your fate belongs to 2 worlds, and neither one seems interested in letting you go. The stairway swallows you whole. You're half dragged, half stumbling. The stone steps slick beneath your bare feet. The air is heavy, thick with the coppery temps of dried blood and the smoke of burning copal resin. Every sound you make, your breath, your footfalls bounces back in whispers. Like the temple itself is listening. Torches flicker along the walls, their flames bending, as if something unseen keeps passing by. You try to glance over your shoulder, but a priest shoves your head forward. You can't tell if the shove is meant to guide you or remind you that you're still prey, at the bottom. The passage opens into a chamber. The ceiling is low, and the walls glisten with moisture. Black mold clinging to the stone like it's been growing here since the gods first walked the earth. Carvings cover every inch, serpents with open jaws, eagles clutching hearts, skulls, stacked like offerings. One of the priests mutters a prayer, his voice barely audible. You recognize the words Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god, patron of sorcerers, lord of destiny and deceit. The prayer isn't for you. It's for themselves. They push you toward a stone basin in the center of the room. It's filled with a dark liquid too thick to be water, too smooth to be just blood. The surface reflects the torchlight in warped, rippling images, like it's showing a world parallel to this one. The high priest steps forward, his shadow long and thin against the wall. Look, he orders, his voice low but carrying weight. You do dot at first. It's only your face staring back, pale under the flickering light, eyes wide, lips trembling. But then the reflection changes. Your eyes are no longer your own. They're gold, burning. Your mouth moves. But it isn't your voice that speaks. The reflection says words you don't understand. It points not at the priests, not at the basin, but upward, toward the ceiling. As though the stone above could dissolve into the sky. The priests exchange quick, worried glances. Whatever they saw, it wasn't what they were expecting. The high priest kneels beside the basin and dips his hand into the liquid. When it comes out, it's not wet, it's smoking. Tendrils curling around his wrist before fading into the air. He grabs your face with that same hand. The smoke stings your eyes, fills your nose, your mouth, even your ears. You choke on it, gagging, but you can't pull away, his grip is too strong. Then, you're not in the chamber anymore. You're standing in the middle of the plaza again, but it's empty. The temple towers above you, the causeway stretching into nothingness. The sky is black, yet the ground glows faintly, as if lit from beneath. Shadows move along the edges of your vision toll, thin, wearing headdresses that reach the clouds. One of them steps forward. You can't see its face. Only a mask half jaguar, half skull. It speaks the sound, like stone grinding on stone. 2 suns. 2 ends. Choose. Before you can ask what it means, the world snaps back. You're on your knees beside the basin, coughing, your hands braced against cold stone. The priests watch you carefully, like you might explode into fire at any moment. The high priest leans close, his breath hot against your ear. The gods speak through you, he says. And now, so will I. He orders the others to leave. One hesitates, glancing to warn you as if to warn you of something. But he obeys. The chamber feels even smaller now. The high priest squats so his eyes are level with yours. Those men outside, he says, his voice slow, deliberate, are not gods. They are hunters. They will take your blood, your bones, your spirit. They will burn this city and call it salvation. You try to speak, but your voice cracks. Then why? Why did you stop? Because you are no longer an offering, he says. You are a weapon. And a weapon must be sharpened before it is used. You realize what he means, and it makes your stomach turn. He's not protecting you. He's keeping you, the way a jaguar keeps prey alive until it's ready to eat. Footsteps echo in the passage outside. Heavy ones, not the soft, padded steps of the priests. The high priest's expression changes. He straightens, moving to the basin again. Do not speak, he warns, no matter what they promise. The door curtain shifts aside, and the strangers enter. 2 armored men, one with a beard like tangled wire, the other younger eyes, sharp and restless. Behind them stands their leader, the man with the red plume on his helmet. The air feels heavier. The torchlight flickers, as if afraid of them. The leader looks at you, then at the basin, then back to the high priest. They speak in that grinding, foreign tongue again. The younger man translates in rough, awkward Nahuatl. Our captain says this one is marked. He will take the one marked. The high priest doesn't move. The gods have not finished with them. The captain's jaw tightens. He gestures, and the older soldier steps forward, placing his hand on the hilt of a strange, curved blade. At his side, the high priest's hand twitches toward the obsidian knife on his belt. The tension is a cord pulled tight, ready to snap. But then, another voice. A woman steps into the chamber. She's not dressed like the men, no armor, no weapons. Her skin is bronze, her hair black and braided with beads. But her clothing is foreign, cut differently from anything Aztec women wear. Her eyes land on you. She says something to the captain, then to the high priest, switching between the 2 languages, as smoothly as water slipping over stone. You catch only fragments, omen, safe passage, until, finally, both men step back. The captain gives a curt nod. The high priest exhales slowly, his hand loosening on the knife. The woman walks toward you. Her voice is low so only you can hear. If you want to live, she says in perfect, unaccented Nahuatl, follow me when I call. She leaves without another glance. The strangers follow her. The high priest waits until the sound of their boots fades. Then he grips your chin, forcing you to meet his gaze. You will go with her, he says. But remember the gods marked. You first. You belong to us. You don't answer. You can single quotes, because in your mind, you still hear the mask-faced figure from the vision. 2 suns, 2 ends. Choose. And you know you don't understand it yet. But soon, you will. Hey guys, tonight we begin with you standing in the middle of the great Templo Mayor courtyard. And let me just say, you're sweating, and not because of the weather. Oh no, it's because 50,000 pairs of eyes are staring at you, like you're both the main course and the evening entertainment. Which, inconveniently, is exactly the case. You know that phrase, all eyes on you? Well, here, it's not a metaphor. From the old toothless ladies chewing maize on the sidelines, to the young warriors fresh from battle, every last person in this plaza is laser-focused on you. You're the special guest of honor. In the same way, a cow is the special guest at a barbecue. The air smells of incense, sweat, and something vaguely metallic that you really, really hope is not what you think it is. Spoiler, it is. You'd recognize that tang anywhere, even if you've never been around this much of it. Blood, and not just a little dribble. We're talking buckets. The drummers start up again, pounding out a rhythm that seems to sync directly with your heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. Each beat is a countdown, and each beat is the exact same sound your ribs will make when they crack open. Or so your overactive imagination is currently informing you. Your feet feel heavier than they've ever felt. It's not the sandals. It's the weight of knowing exactly what's coming next. The priests, 4 of them, approach you, each one painted head to toe in black soot, and wearing feathered headdresses so tall they could block out the sun if you weren't already staring directly at your doom. The tallest priest, who's got the kind of eyes that say, "I've done this 1,000 times before." And you're just Tuesday's lunch, grips your shoulder with a hand so strong it might as well be a vice. He says something in Nahuatl. You don't catch it, but you're pretty sure it's not. Don't worry, this won't hurt a bit. The crowd roars in approval, a tidal wave of sound that makes your knees want to buckle. But the thing about being tied up in front of an audience is, you don't get to collapse in peace. The priests hoist you up the stone steps of the pyramid. And let me tell you, these aren't casual steps. They're steep, slick, with, let's call it, ceremonial residue, and they go on forever. Halfway up, you glance over your shoulder. Mistake. You see the city sprawling out like a mosaic of color and life. Canals glittering in the sun. Markets buzzing with merchants. Children darting between stalls. It's beautiful. It's the last beautiful thing you'll see. By the time you reach the top, your breath is coming in short, sharp bursts. Part from the climb, part from the fact that you can now see the altar, flat stone. Slightly concave in the middle, designed with one thing in mind, keeping you still while someone else does all the hard work. And by hard work, I mean opening your chest like a pomegranate. The drummers are louder now, almost frenzied. The crowd below is chanting. The words are lost on you, but the intent isn't. They want to see the gods fed, and you're on the menu. The priests position you on the altar. One grabs your head, another your legs, 2 more your arms. You can't move. You can barely breathe. Then the high priest steps forward. He's holding something you were really hoping not to see. The ceremonial obsidian blade. It's sharp. Sharp in a way that looks like it could slice through, not just skin, but time itself. The blade catches the sunlight, winking at you like it's in on the joke. And just as he raises it above your chest, he pauses. This is the part they never tell you about. The showmanship. The priest holds the blade aloft, letting the sunlight glint off it, for maximum dramatic effect. The crowd eats it up. You, meanwhile, are lying there thinking, can we not drag this out? But the thing is, this pause isn't just for drama. It's for the gods. They have to make sure the timing is perfect, that your heart is ripped out at the exact moment when the sun hits its peak, when the offering will be most pleasing. You don't know how much time you've got left, but you can feel the seconds bleeding away. And then, just when your mind is screaming this is it, something strange happens. A ripple goes through the crowd. Heads turn. The drummers falter for just a moment. Even the high priest glances over his shoulder. You can't see what's causing it. Your head is pinned, but you can feel the shift in the air. It's not relief you feel. It's dread. Because whatever just showed up on that temple top isn't here to save you. It's here to make things worse. The shift in the atmosphere is subtle at first, like the way the air changes just before a storm. The crowd, moments ago a single roaring organism, now hums with an uneasy vibration. The chant falters, fragments, breaks apart into pockets of whispered speculation. From your fixed position on the altar, you catch flashes of movement beyond the high priest's shoulder. Figures emerging from the stairway that leads to the other side of the pyramid. Not warriors. Not priests. Children, but not the laughing, mischief-making children of the market you saw earlier. These are pale, unnaturally pale, as though they've been kept far from the sun for far too long. Their hair hangs lank and unwashed, framing faces that don't blink often enough. They're barefoot, their ankles and wrists marked by thin, dark scars that could be from ropes or something worse. And they're silent. The only sound they make is the soft scuff of their feet against the stone as they approach. The high priest steps aside, not deferentially, but cautiously, like a man who knows he's in the presence of something he can't fully control. One of the children, a boy no older than 8, carries something in his hands, a shallow clay bowl. You can't see what's inside, but the way the nearest priest flinches when the boy passes tells you it's not fruit or flowers. The tallest of the children, a girl with eyes so dark they seem to swallow the sunlight, walks right up to you. She doesn't speak. She doesn't smile. She just studies your face for a long, unbearable moment, as if she's measuring you against some invisible standard. Then, she places a hand on your chest. It's cold. Not her skin is cool cold. It's the kind of cold that sinks straight through muscle and bone, into the center of you, like ice water poured into your veins. Your breath catches involuntarily. Somewhere in the crowd, someone gasps. The high priest mutters something under his breath in Nahuatl. You don't catch the words, but the tone is clear. Fear. The girl tilts her head slightly, then looks toward the boy with the bowl. He steps forward, lifts it just enough for you to catch a glimpse inside, and that's when your stomach turns. It's a heart, fresh, still twitching. The drummers have stopped entirely now. The only sounds are the wind whistling over the pyramid, and the faint, rhythmic squelch from inside the bowl. The girl takes the bowl from the boy, sets it down beside your head, and whispers something in a language you've never heard. It's not Nahuatl. It's older, rougher. It sounds like the crack of dry branches underfoot, like the hiss of something crawling through grass. The high priest stiffens, his eyes wide, but he doesn't interrupt. The girl's cold hand presses harder against your chest. You feel it, not just the pressure, but something else, something sliding beneath her palm like invisible tendrils curling into you. Your pulse stutters. The edges of your vision blur. You realize, with a clarity that's almost calm, that she's not here to stop the sacrifice. She's here to change it. Somewhere in the crowd below, a voice cries out, not in horror, but in ecstasy. Others join in. The murmurs swell into a chant again, but this time, the rhythm is wrong. It's not the steady boom of war drums anymore. It's erratic, fevered, like the heartbeat of something that doesn't belong in this world. The girl leans down until her face is inches from yours. Her eyes are bottomless. She says a single word, low and deliberate. You don't know what it means, but you feel it, like it's been carved into the inside of your skull. Your body reacts before your mind can catch up. Your back arches against the altar, your muscles locking so hard it feels like your spine might snap. You can hear your own heartbeat pounding in your ears, and then, impossibly, you hear another one layered over it, a second heartbeat, louder, closer. The cold in your chest spreads, and you realize with mounting terror that it's not ice. It's something alive, something moving. The girl finally steps back, and the high priest, now visibly shaking, raises the obsidian blade again. But there's no ceremony in it now, no dramatic pause. He drives it down into your chest in one brutal motion, and that's when the screaming starts. Not from you, from the crowd. Because when he opens you, it's not just blood that spills out. It's something black, something that moves. You don't remember falling asleep, but you sure as hell remember waking up. Not the gentle, lazy sort of waking where you stretch, yawn, and think about breakfast. No, this was the kind where your whole body tenses at once, like your bones already know something's wrong before your brain catches up. The air was different, thicker, hotter, and every sound in the world had been replaced by one thing: your own heartbeat. Loud, uncomfortably loud, like it had moved from your chest to the inside of your skull. You sat up, trying to find a reason, some rational explanation, and that's when you saw them. 3 men, or at least you thought they were men. They wore masks that looked like snarling animal faces, jaguars, wolves, and something you couldn't name. The eye holes were dark and empty. They weren't breathing heavily. They weren't moving much at all. And somehow that was worse. The tallest one stepped forward, and in the dim light you saw the obsidian blade in his hand. It caught a sliver of moonlight, and for just a moment, you thought it shimmered red. Not from rust, from something fresher. "You've been chosen," he said. His voice was muffled through the mask, but still carried a weight that made your stomach twist. Chosen for what? Oh, you already knew. The stories you'd been hearing since yesterday weren't just creepy folklore. They were a warning. And now, you were face to face with the thing they'd been trying to warn you about. They didn't drag you. They didn't tie you up. That was the worst part. They just stood there waiting for you to follow, like you were a kid being told to come inside for dinner. And somehow, against every screaming nerve in your body, you did. The temple rose ahead of you, its steps like the open jaws of something ancient. The night air reeked of incense, but underneath it, blood, thick, metallic, and cloying. You'd never smelled so much of it in one place, and you prayed you never would again. Halfway up, you heard chanting. Not words you understood, more like a low, rolling hum that vibrated in your ribs. The higher you climbed, the harder it was to think. Your own thoughts felt like they were being pushed out of your skull to make room for that sound. At the top, the world opened. You could see the fires of the city below, the black silhouette of mountains, and the impossible, crushing closeness of the stars. But all of it faded when you turned toward the altar. It wasn't stone, it was bone, layer upon layer, polished, smooth by countless hands, stained in ways that could never wash out. The tallest masked man raised his blade to the sky, and the chant reached its peak. The sound felt like it was splitting you open before the blade even touched you. And that's when it happened. Something in the back of your mind whispered. This is not the first time that thought hit harder than the fear. You didn't know why it was there, but you knew it was true. You had been here before. Maybe not in this body, maybe not in this life, but here, under these same stars, with that same blade glinting in the firelight. You know that moment when you think someone is staring right at you, and then, suddenly, you realize they weren't. Multiply that by 1,000, and you've got the exact sensation that ripped through your chest that day. One moment, the gods were there, or at least their gaze was. You could feel it, heavy, warm, suffocating like a quilt you couldn't push off, and then, nothing. It was like being left alone in the middle of a jungle after someone takes away the torch. The shadows became hungrier. The air turned thick with a kind of silence that isn't quiet at all. It hums, it waits, it listens, and you, my friend, you knew something had gone terribly wrong. I remember you standing there, staring up at the obsidian temple peak. You weren't breathing, I wasn't either. Somewhere inside, that steady, ancient rhythm, the heartbeat of the city, had skipped. The drums didn't sound. The wind didn't carry the scent of burning copal. The priest who always hovered at the top steps wasn't there. Instead, there was smoke. Thin, gray, curling like fingers out of the temple doors. The crowd that had gathered to watch the morning rite began murmuring, shuffling. You could hear sandals scraping against the stone. People glanced at each other, some trying to smile, others clutching amulets. And then, the whisper began. They blinked. I don't know who said it first. Could have been that old woman with the scar over her lip, or the boy selling roasted maize. But once it was spoken, it spread like dry fire through grass. The gods blinked, and everyone knew what that meant. When they stopped watching, bad things happened. Your skin prickled, and I could see the thought in your eyes. If they're not watching, who is? We pushed through the crowd, edging toward the temple steps. And that's when we saw them, the high priests, or what was left of them. For men, usually dressed in immaculate jaguar pelts and blood-red cloaks, now staggered out with bare feet and wild hair. Their eyes were wide, their mouths dry, and worse, their hands were empty. No ceremonial knives, no offerings. One of them, the youngest, tried to speak. But the only thing that came out was a broken, choked laugh. Gone, he rasped. What's gone? Someone shouted. He looked right at you. That's the part I still can't shake. Out of hundreds of faces he found yours. And with a voice that was almost a whisper, the sun under the sun. Before you could ask what in the burning maze. Cakes, he meant. The older priest grabbed his arm and dragged him away, vanishing into the smoke. Now, you and I had heard plenty of riddles from the temple before, but that one, that was different. The sun under the sun wasn't a phrase people tossed around. It was forbidden talk. The kind that, if spoken out loud, could get you tied to the offering stone yourself. And here's where things went from strange to someone has really lost control. The birds stopped. I'm not being poetic. They literally stopped mid-flight. Two bright green parrots just froze above the plaza like someone had pressed pause. Then they fell, straight down. The crowd screamed, scattering, but you stood there staring at the parrots' tiny glassy eyes, realizing they weren't dead. They were empty. And in that instant, you knew the gods hadn't just blinked. They'd turned their faces away entirely. But why? That night you couldn't sleep. Neither could I. From your mat, you stared at the ceiling as if answers might crawl out of the shadows. And maybe they almost did, because right before dawn, there was a scratching sound. Not at the door, not on the floor, but inside the walls, slow, patient, purposeful. You held your breath, counting the seconds between each scrape. 1, 2, 3, then silence, and then a whisper. So close to your ear, you swore someone was kneeling beside you. They're coming to take the other one. You bolted upright, but no one was there. No shadow, no shape, just the thin, gray morning light, and a cold patch of floor where someone, or something, had been sitting. And that, my friend, was the moment we both realized we were no longer spectators in whatever this was. We were inside it now. The gods had blinked, and in the darkness between their eyelids, something else had slipped in. And you're about to find out what it wanted. You didn't tell anyone about the whisper. Not your mother, not the market women, not even the old man who sold you dried chilies and always seemed to know everyone's secrets before they did. Some things weren't safe to speak out loud, not because you feared being mocked, but because saying them made them real. But the plaza knew something had shifted. The air had changed. 3 days after the gods blinked, the city's shadow began to stretch wrong. At first you thought it was a trick of the light. The rainy season clouds had been playing strange games with the sun all week, casting shapes that crawled like snakes over the cobblestones. But then, people began noticing their shadows no longer matched their movements. In the marketplace, a girl dropped a basket of limes, but her shadow didn't bend to pick them up. It just stood there, watching her. In the potter's alley, a man raised his hammer to break clay, but his shadow kept hammering long after he stopped. And when the old scar-lipped woman from the plaza walked by, her shadow didn't follow. It darted ahead of her, slipping into an alley and not returning. That's when the first panic began. People crowded the temple steps, demanding answers. The priests didn't come out this time. The smoke still drifted from the obsidian doors. But no one saw movement inside. By nightfall, the fear had teeth. You heard it first from the rooftops. The sound of dogs howling in perfect unison. Not a warning bark, not a fight. Just long, low notes that sounded more like mourning than threat. From your window, you saw them. Every dog in the district, standing still in the streets, facing east. Not toward the temple, but toward the horizon, and that's when the second sun rose. It wasn't bright like the first. It was dull, as if it had been burning for too long, and had run out of fuel. The disk hovered low, almost touching the earth, pulsing faintly like a dying ember. But the strangest thing was, its light. It didn't illuminate. It erased. The places it touched went pale, their edges blurring. The market stalls, the baskets of fruit, the faces of neighbors. They all looked drained, like paintings left too long in the sun. You couldn't move. No one could. The crowd was silent, staring, breathing shallow, as the second sun drifted higher. Then came the shadow. It wasn't cast beneath the second sun. It was the shadow, a vast, rippling shape, bigger than the city, stretching from the horizon toward the plaza. It moved slowly, like it had all the time in the world. And wherever it touched, people collapsed. Not dead, just emptied. Their eyes stayed open, but they were gone. Like the parrots, you grabbed my arm, nails digging deep, and whispered the question I'd been trying not to think about. What happens when it reaches us? The answer came before I could speak. From somewhere deep inside the temple, a voice roared, not in words, but in a sound that tore through stone and bone alike. The obsidian doors burst open, and a single figure stepped out. It wasn't a priest. It wasn't even human. Its skin shimmered like hot air above a road, shifting between colors you couldn't name. Its eyes were pits, not black, not empty, but something worse. They were crowded. Faces swam in them, hundreds, all screaming silently. And it was carrying something. In its hands was a sphere, glowing faintly, like a miniature second sun. But this one wasn't dull. It was blinding. Even through your eyelids, you could see it. And when the figure raised it high, the second sun in the sky trembled. That's when you realized this wasn't about worship. It was about theft. Someone or something had stolen the god's second sun, and now the one in the sky had come to reclaim it. The figure turned its gaze to you. The figure's gaze didn't just look at you, it weighed you. It was like standing beneath a waterfall made of heat and gravity, as if your bones were being inspected for cracks. The crowd around you didn't move, not because they couldn't, but because the air itself had been told to stay still. In the distance, the second sun's shadow crept closer, swallowing whole streets in silence. The sound of the city, hawkers, carts, drums, laughter, had vanished. All that remained was the low, steady hum, coming from the sphere in the figure's hands. You'd heard something like it once before, in the cavern beneath the southern riverbank, where the water trickled through a narrow crack and made the stone walls sing. But this hum had a hunger to it. Each vibration felt like it was looking for a place to live inside you. The figure stepped forward, and with each step, the stones beneath its feet blackened and cracked like clay in a kiln. Its shimmering form flickered, and for brief moments, you saw other shapes: a hunched old man with hollow cheeks, a child with no eyes, a serpent wearing a crown of ribs. Every flicker came with a stutter in your heartbeat, like your body was trying to match its rhythm, but couldn't keep up. Then, it spoke, not in a language, not in a voice. The words landed in your head like they'd been there forever, waiting to be remembered. You carry the hollow key. You didn't know what it meant. But the moment the thought appeared, something inside your chest shifted. Not a muscle, not your heart, something older. And you realized, with a kind of cold clarity, that this was why the whisper had chosen you days ago. The second sun in the sky flared, sending a ripple of light through the air like a dropped stone in a pond. Everything it touched, rooftops, walls, faces, wavered and warped, as if melting into shadow. People began screaming, but the screams didn't make sound. Their mouths moved, but their voices were swallowed. The figure extended its hand toward you, the sphere still glowing in its other palm. The hum grew louder, pressing against your skull. Behind it, the shadow's edge reached the first row of onlookers. They didn't fall, they vanished. One moment they were there, the next, their shapes were part of the shadow, flattened, twitching like insects caught in amber. You should have run. You wanted to run. But your feet knew that moving now would make you visible in a way you couldn't survive. The figure's shimmering form shifted again. Now it was closer to human, but too perfect, too symmetrical. Its voice returned, inside your mind. Return it, and the hunger will pass. You almost asked return what? But you already knew. Not with logic, but with the kind of knowledge that wakes you at night, with your heart pounding. Somewhere inside, you, maybe in your breath, maybe in your bones, was a piece of the second sun, and it wanted it back. The shadow reached the plaza steps. People clutched each other in mute terror as their outlines began to blur. One by one, they became stains on the cobblestones, stretching toward the sphere like it was the only light in the world. You looked at the figure, and it tilted its head, almost gently as if waiting for you to make the only choice that mattered. The moment you stepped forward, the sky tore a knot in a way anyone could have prepared for. Not like a storm front, not like the jagged split of lightning, but like cloth being ripped from the inside out. It began with a thin, trembling seam of darkness above the plaza, stretching wider with every beat of your heart. The second sun's light bent toward the tier, curving unnaturally, as if the sky itself was being poured into it. Colors bled wrong. The gold of the sun turned the shade of burnt bone. The blue of the day deepened to the bruised purple of drowned skin. The figure in front of you held the sphere higher, and its hum shifted from a vibration in your skull to a throbbing deep in your chest, rattling your ribs like a drum. You could feel your pulse sinking with it against your will. Around you, the people who hadn't yet vanished were frozen mid-motion, their limbs locked in angles that no human body should hold. A boy stood with one hand outstretched toward his mother, his fingers already unraveling into black threads that drifted upward toward the tear. The sound of the city was gone, not silent, but emptied. You realized that all the noise had been sucked upward, as though the tear had grown thirsty for every last vibration. Even the wind had stopped, leaving the air thick and unmoving. The tear widened further. Through it, you could see nothing. Not stars, not darkness. Just an absence so absolute, your eyes wanted to turn away from it. Looking into it felt like leaning too far over the railing of an endless drop. And then, it looked back, not with eyes, not with a face, but you felt its attention on you. Vast, cold, curious. It was the kind of gaze that made you understand you were not the main story here. You were barely even a word in its language. The figure lowered the sphere until it hovered directly above its other hand. The hum became sharper, turning into something like a whisper in a language that had no sound. Return it, and the mouth will close. The words filled you again, but now they came from both the figure and the tear. It was as though they had been speaking in unison all along, one voice wearing two shapes. You thought of refusing, but then the edge of the shadow reached the base of the statue in the plaza's center, and the stone itself began to peel away in strips, unraveling into black mist that rose toward the wound in the sky. Your breath grew heavy. Each inhale felt longer to return. And in that suffocating stillness, a truth slid into you like a knife. The tear wasn't just swallowing the world. It was swallowing time. You were standing in the last moment the city would ever know. The figure stepped closer. Its perfect, two-human face flickered, and for an instant, you saw your own. Not the way you looked now, but older, worn eyes ringed with shadows. A person who had seen the inside of this tear more than once. Your hand rose toward the sphere. Before you realized you'd moved, the moment your fingers brushed its surface, the hum surged, and for a heartbeat, the tear paused. The air seemed to wait. Your hand clamped around the sphere, and the world flinched. It was not a metaphor. The stones beneath, your boots buckled, as if the city itself had recoiled from the choice you were about to make. The tear above froze in its slow, deliberate, widening, trembling like a muscle holding back a scream. The light of the second sun faltered, flickering in uneven pulses that sent ripples through the air like heat waves. The figure in front of you. That impossible mirror of something both human and not tilted its head. Its mouth never moved, yet its voice unfurled inside your mind with a weight that made your knees want to bend. You hold its heart. The sphere throbbed in your palm, warm, alive, as if a pulse beat within it. And in that pulse you could hear something, not words, but a hunger older than the world you stood on. A longing that wanted only one thing: return. Give it back, the figure said. Or maybe the tear itself said, its voice scraping against the edges of your thoughts. Close. The wound let the mouth sleep again. But then, another voice rose within you, one that wasn't from the figure, wasn't from the tear. It was sharp, intimate, your own thoughts speaking in a way they had never dared before. If you give it back, the city lives, but you will never know what lies beyond. Keep it, and the wound stays open, and you will walk into it. The images came in flashes, a forest that breathed like a lung, towers made of bone and glass, their shadows moving in different directions than the sun, a sea with no surface, only depth, pulling you down into a lightless choir of shapes older than the word God. Your grip tightened on the sphere. Every choice burned. Behind you, the frozen figures in the plaza began to tremble. The boy whose fingers had unraveled into threads now had no arm at all. His shoulder frayed into black dust, yet his gaze stayed locked on you. His eyes did not plead. They waited. The tears shivered, and you felt its pull increase. Loose stones, shreds of cloth, and bits of glass lifted from the ground and spiraled upward like ash caught in a rising draft. The air grew thinner. Every breath felt like it scraped your lungs raw. Return it, the figure said again, but softer now, almost afraid. And then, like a crack in the quiet, You understood something. The figure did not serve the tear. It feared it. A truth clicked into place. The sphere was not its heart. It was its lock. If you gave it back, the tear would not close, because it was satisfied. It would close because it was trapped. And locks could be broken from the inside. Your choice sharpened into two roads. Close it now, and give the world more time, maybe days, maybe years before the tear learned to open, without the sphere. Or, keep the lock in your hands and step into the mouth before it could close. Learn what it was, why it was here, and whether anything waited on the far side that could be bargained with. The sphere's heat pulsed once more. The plazas. Shadows leaned toward you. You knew the decision would end one of two ways. Saving the city, or saving the truth.